Welcome to the Lost Signals Discusses Film and TV. Using the revolutionary Manzur-Mosi Thurlow scale,
or MONS,
we scrupulously review these art forms with an emphasis on narrative structure. Join us for another entertaining episode. Hello, and welcome back to the Lost Signals Discusses Film and TV. Today, we are going to be talking about a blast from the present movie, Ready Player One, directed by Steven Spielberg. So I am your host, Steve-O, or Steve Ramosi, joined today by Rich Perry.
Ready?
And Scott Thurlow.
Player.
One?
I think we were supposed to do that differently, but
yes,
whatever.
yes. I'm sorry.
We discussed it
messed it all
beforehand,
up.
dude. Anyway.
I have so much on my mind with what I'm going to say about this movie. Anyway,
All right, well, let's jump into it.
Did we have a log line that we wanted to say?
Yeah, I mean, we had a couple, but
I know you guys were tossing around a couple beforehand.
the thing is, it's obvious because this is 80s nostalgia, the movie, pretty much pop culture, the movie.
Yeah,
Or agoraphobia, the movie.
Yeah, sure.
Nostalgia porn.
Yeah, I like that. You know what? I like nostalgia porn. Let's go with that one.
All right, well, let's just get right into it. I'm going to talk about the plot. So this movie revolves around a virtual world of virtual reality called the Oasis that was created by this insane genius named Halliday.
Elon Musk / Steve Jobs type of XP.
Yeah, that type of guy. And basically everybody just kind of lives their lives in here through these avatars that they've created. The main character his avatar is Parzival. He gets involved in a Easter egg hunt to try and find Halliday, the creator, has left an Easter egg hunt after he dies to basically, if you find the Easter egg, you get control of the Oasis.
I mean,
like,
dude, it's Willy Wonka. It's Willy Wonka in VR.
It's exactly Willy Wonka.
Pretty much.
You're absolutely right. He meets up with he's already friends with a bunch, and then meets up with a bunch of people, and then meets up with his, the love interest, Artemis.
Standard love interest.
And they become this clan, even though they all say that they're not a clan for the whole movie until the end when they say they're a clan. And they kind of go through trying to find this, and they're being battled by a corporate entity who wants to win control of the Oasis.
Corrupt corporate executive.
Yeah, of course, obviously. And they end up beating them in a long, drawn-out final battle. And Parzival, or Wade, as is his actual name, ends up getting control of the Oasis and getting like $1 billion or whatever the fuck.
250 trillion.
A shitload.
It doesn't matter. Whatever it was. All the money in the shitty
close
world.
to $500 billion or $250 billion or something.
It doesn't actually matter. A lot of money.
All the money he could ever want.
Yes.
And then
Some.
And then the movie ends. And then he kisses the girl and the movie ends. So I don't know what I'm gonna give this. It's a, as I was saying right after I got in, and as I was thinking the entire time, it's a fun movie.
Mm. You can say that.
Like, it's pure fan service. Like,
fan service the movie is good. Yeah, it's a good one. Yep.
But it's fun in that way, and it's enjoyable to see all these like characters that have become avatars of random people in the Oasis now, and it's a bunch of there are a bunch of references and things like that. I'm sure that somewhere in this movie there are Easter eggs specifically made for some kind of like hunt. He did the same. Ernest Cline wrote the book. He did the same thing with the book, where he hid a bunch of Easter eggs in the book, and people figured it out in like fucking 10 minutes. But like, I'm sure in this movie there's something similar. I didn't catch it like I didn't in the book because I'm not specifically wired to catch that type of stuff. But as far as the plot itself goes, it was lacking in several points. There was a ton of exposition, just nonstop exposition.
That was unavoidable.
That's sort of like dialogue, and
I guess it's unavoidable, but it's avoidable to the extent that it was done, and it was just the beginning was fucking brutal because of it. Like,
I see what you mean.
you could explain some of this stuff through dialogue or like through other means, or perhaps a more interesting version of doing this exposition.
Spielberg would never do that, though.
Like Spielberg has done that in other movies, old movies that were good.
Not
Like,
anymore.
I feel like he just kind of has gotten a little bit lazy in his filmmaking of late, especially with the this year, or the last 2 years, with the Post coming out last year and Ready Player One this year.
Yeah.
But it's like ultimately it's just really fun, which is the entire reason I wanted to see this movie. I didn't think it was going to be good. The books. The writing of the book isn't like anything spectacular, but it's a really fun book to read. Like, it's just a page turner that like reminds you of all the shit that was cool back in the day, and like that's what the movie was. And I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that, but I have to take away at least a point or two from plot because of the fact that it doesn't super hold together. So I'm leaning towards a 1. I might give it a 2. I want to hear what you guys have to say.
All right. I agree to a large extent that it's definitely not a 3. It's either a 1 or a 2 when I was coin flipping it in my own mind on the ride back, talking out a bit with Rich. So here's my sort of breakdown of it, Steve-O. It's a very basic, serviceable plot. Like, you get what it's going to be, like, pretty early on. It's just not trying to do anything. It's not a fucking spy thriller or anything like that. Like you said, sort of an excuse in a sense to have all these references and have, like, a bare bones, like, corrupt corporate executive wants to rule the world and is beaten by a bunch of, like, ragtag group of, like, undeveloped, but, like, living in the shitty portion of the world. A vague dystopia.
Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah, obviously. As you mentioned. So sure, like, you've seen that fucking plot like 1,000 times, and it was perfectly serviceably fine done here, I think. I think I'm going to lean towards a solid 2, in a sense, like, not a strong 2, but, like, it held together because it, like, you almost can't fuck it up because it's so kind of basic. Like, you know what I mean? And yeah, there was a little bit of holes, I have my problems with it and issues, that a bunch of nitpicks that add up to, like, a number of, I think decent issues. But overall, I could see a case for a 1 as well, like a strong 1 or a soft 2. So I'll probably go with a soft 2 because you're right. It was very enjoyable. Yeah. Although it's nothing. Again, it's nothing mind blowing. It's nothing like trying to do anything different. So that's my stance. What do you think, Rich?
Most of my entertainment came from the nostalgia factor and all the shout outs. So I'm giving it a 1 for nostalgia's sake.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think I'm gonna stick with a 1. Something I kind of wanted to talk about, and I'm not exactly sure where to talk about it, but like when early on when we were doing Bon Mots, we had a question that was, were there any moments that made you cringe? And in this movie, there were several moments.
We never had that question per se, but we encapsulated it into other things.
Well, the question was, were you ever taken out of the movie? I don't remember exactly how I phrased it, but
it was immersion, I think. But anyway.
Yes, yeah, exactly. But there were several cringeworthy moments, which always like kind of really reminds me that I'm sitting in a chair in a fucking theater.
Sure, I get it.
And that bugged me, and I think that's why I'm going to stick with a 1.
All right.
I mean, that could go into style as well.
See, now that was going to be my point. Sorry to cut in, but a lot of the things that I didn't like the exposition, like sort of some of the stilted interactions with some of the characters, all that I ship into dialogue in a sense. So like, but you guys may have convinced me to give it a solid 1 as well. Like, again, because it's so basic that there's not much there to work with in a sense. And Ernest Cline, the author of the book, which I haven't read, admittedly, he did work on the script though.
Yes.
He co-wrote the script, I believe. So like, yeah, it was perfectly fine, again, for what it was, but it wasn't trying to do anything beyond that. So I think you guys might have convinced me, like, it's not bad. Don't get me wrong. It's like I said. So, but I think I will give it a 1, and whatever points I'm taking away, I'll probably ship elsewhere.
Okay.
So I'll do a 1 for plot.
All right, sounds good. So it sounds like 1's all around for plot. And let's kick it to themes with Rich over here.
Let's see. We got a couple to choose from. Reality sucks, but it's necessary.
When the speech at the end.
It's the only thing that's real.
Do you get it?
Reality is real. Thanks, man.
Hold on, let me say it again.
Yeah. Dropping some knowledge on me here, but go on, Rich.
Then it's never a good idea to let the corporations get involved with something awesome.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the strongest one, actually.
Yeah.
Corporate greed is everywhere and always will be there.
Yeah, we just, like, me and Scott had just changed Sorrento and IOI to EA.
Yeah.
It's like,
Like, that was my personal joke about it, like, pretty much.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I don't know, like, nostalgia is awesome as a theme, like, I guess.
I mean, as long as it doesn't rule your life like it did his.
I suppose.
That's why you got to take Tuesdays and Thursdays off.
Why those specific days?
And how,
It's
like,
completely arbitrary. It doesn't
why
really
would
matter.
no one would ever do that? I don't know.
It doesn't matter. Again,
That's a weird nitpick, but
that's a sticking point that we could apply to plot, like we just said. So yeah, like those themes were there, Rich. Like we agreed, we talked a bit about it. But like the thing for me is, I don't know if this movie trying to say anything really, again, aside from just entertaining you with all the nostalgia shit that you like know and like and remember.
It's like every lesson that they were trying to drop was kind of drowned out by, I don't know, Chucky being thrown at a group of people to stabbed
awesome.
to death.
Yeah, like,
it was very awesome.
Like murder is awesome as long as it's in a VR like safe environment, I guess, and then you can fight the corporations who are keeping all the population down. Like that stuff like was tangentially there, but I don't believe the movie itself was necessarily trying to do all that much. It's the intention versus execution angle that we often I like to start viewing things or have begun viewing when we look at things like this in that light. So yeah,
it's very hard to tell like what their intention actually was.
Exactly, beyond pure entertainment. And on that front, it entertained, sure. But as far as messages, is it trying to comment on anything really? I don't think so. Like it might approach
because it doesn't go far enough.
Exactly, my man. So like it might have approached something here and there, but I don't think it was intending to, and I don't think even if it was got there either way. So
well, I think there was definitely an intent to discuss the
clinging to nostalgia.
No.
Okay, go on.
That was just that. Like I said, this movie's pure nostalgia porn. Like it's all about nostalgia is the coolest thing in the world. But
sure,
I think that the corporate
angle,
greed angle, there's something to it. And I think that there's something you said for like PMCs. And like the way that the corporation IOI had its own basically military, both in and outside of the game. God, sorry. And I think there is something small to be said there. I'm leaning towards a very soft 1 for this, just because I think that it had something to say about that, even if it didn't quite go far enough into it, and it didn't quite say what it wanted to the extent that it wanted to, I don't think.
Okay, here's my sort of counter argument rebuttal to that. Yeah, you're right. Like that's the closest thing it had there to being like a serious theme. But again, the message, what corporate greed is bad. Like, yeah, I know. Like it's obvious. Like you don't need to like teach anybody that really. Like it's going to be the case almost always in a sense. And sure, like you're right. They incorporated that, but I don't think it's again. Enough there, even on that front, for me to give it credit. So,
well, it's just kind of like taking corporate greed to its like logical conclusion.
Right, I understand that.
Here's where corporations are just have PMCs that go kill people if they get in their way, and like to an extent, you can see that in the real world.
Sure.
Facebook isn't going to go out and have somebody murdered, probably, or at least not like blow up their entire fucking
not yet
stack of houses. But when they control as much as IOI did and have a complete monopoly, and apparently there's no goddamn cops anywhere until the end of the freaking movie.
Another nitpick for the plot.
Yeah, like.
But I agree.
I mean, I like I said, I'm going to give it a soft 1. I completely understand why you guys would give it a 0 if you're sticking with zeros.
Yeah, I'm giving it a soft 0. Like it's just. I agree with you to an extent.
Like we said, it's there, but
not enough, and it's just not. Doesn't really say much beyond that.
It's almost like they pay lip service to what these themes are, and then just because even when Halliday, well, whatever that was, whether it was AI or Halliday's spirit trapped within the Oasis,
it's clearly AI. I'm pretty sure.
I'm gonna nitpick that when we get to it, but
what are you?
Yeah. Anyway,
yeah, but like. Even when he's just like, because reality's real, and then just like turns and leaves.
Yeah.
It's like, don't shut off the Oasis.
You figure it out. Don't turn it off by accident on your first day.
Mm-hmm.
I like how there's a...
What are you, man?
I like how there's no backup of the fucking biggest computer, like most important computer program.
No prototype, no plans, no backup, dude. But no,
it was like if there was a backup, he did say there would be tapeworms that went out to rectify that.
Yeah.
But anyway, like I could almost be convinced on your side of the fence, Steve-O, but I think I'm sticking just on Rich's side with a soft-ish 0 for themes.
All right.
Although I don't think it's bereft of themes, but the one that we said was there, but just didn't really do much with it.
I get you. Yeah. All right. Well, why don't you continue talking, Scott, about antagonists?
All right. So, yeah, as I sort of just alluded to and mentioned, it's corporate president, asshole, CEO, like dickhead, like that you've seen. Like, and again, like he's like the guy from RoboCop. He's the guy from fucking Total Recall, like whatever you want to name there.
You've seen him in every 80s movie. Yeah. That has to do with
because it's exactly like he's like an anagram of every single one ever. So he's going to be doing the move that character always makes and always says and does. So, like, it was fine. Like, it's almost has to be there. But again, like, bog standard cookie cutter villain. They didn't really have, like, any interesting angles to him. I don't remember who played him. I don't remember his name. I just called him CEO, asshole. Like, it was almost so nondescript, so bland, because that's what you need for this type of villain, almost to an extent. So that's sort of where I'm leaning. Like, again, a softest 0. I thought the guy's portrayal, I'm sorry, I don't remember the actor's name, but whoever played him was fine. He did a good job with, again, playing a very narrow
material.
Yeah, exactly. What the script called for that character to behave like. So that's why, like, it was fine. Like, yes.
I have to act this bland. He wrote me this way.
Exactly. Like, I mean, if they had that line, I might have thought it'd be better. But no, I mean, like, he's going to have to make the moves he makes against the protagonist because that's what they do. Like, yeah, they have the private little army, like, digitized and also, in the real world, like, hunting people down, like, trying to own everybody and trying to, like, have his master plan was put ads in everyone's faces, like, all the time. Like, okay.
Yep. Corporate greed, man.
Yeah. So, like, again, if corporate greed itself is the villain, then I'll probably give that a 1.
Let's make that the villain. I mean, who says we can't?
I think it kind of is, and I was gonna.
It's funny because I would normally do that, as you guys know, but
I was gonna say, like, you're right. He's kind of forgettable as like the main villain, but I like the characters that he's trying to. Specifically, IROC, played by T.J. Miller.
I kind of more a secondary character, but he was a anti-hero essentially.
I think him and
Finale.
The Finale, like, built up to one decent villain, right?
They're a triangle of villainy.
They were supposed to be his henchmen,
right?
But like they both talk shit to him about how out of his element he was.
Yeah. So like he has his henchmen in the real world
for the corporation
and in the AI world.
Right.
You never actually see T.J. Miller, which is great. Like he doesn't real person doesn't actually make it.
It's like his assassinary merchant off the books, and he's got his official head of the security or whatever.
But they do both shit on him, the guy who's ostensibly supposed to be the
way too competent to be working for him.
I'm counting them both as secondary.
Well, he's got a shitload of money.
That's true.
A lot of competent people work for people with a lot of money.
But I'm counting them both as secondary characters, even though I agree they're well done. So, but if we're going to call antagonists like the idea or corporate greed as personified by that dude, then okay, like I'll give that a 1 because it's always going to be effective. At least I think so. Being on the other end of corporate greed, that is to say, on the shit end of the stick.
Yeah.
So like that's fine. I'll give it a solid soft 1 if we're going to personify it like in that sense.
I think I am going to count the 3 of them as
a trio.
Yeah, like one good villain.
All right,
right?
Fair.
And I think that together they're pretty solid. And he like what I like about it is I think about like how our villain or antagonist antagonizes the main character every time I look at a movie, and between the 3 of them, Wade is like just everywhere he goes, there's somebody watching him.
They're on his ass.
About ready to fuck with him, and I like that. Like, if there's one thing that that Spielberg can do, it's that he can make you feel the presence of something that is pushing you towards pushing you towards that point of no return, the fulcrum, and he's always been good at doing that, whether or not his movies like not depending on the strength of the movie, but I think that in this case they were pretty good, and I'm going to give antagonists a 1.
All right.
Rich?
I think I'm going to give it a 1.
Yeah, right. I'm giving it a 1 for what I said, but your angle is also perfectly valid, and I like it.
All right.
Yeah, I'm taking a little bit of both of yours.
Yeah, and cutting them up. And
slice it up.
Fair enough.
Each one's 0.5.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, so it goes to protagonist with me. Wade
Slash Percival.
What is his last name? Wilson?
Wade Watts.
Watson.
Wade Watts, that's right. Yeah.
It's like Wade Boggs. That's how I thought.
Wade Boggs, so Wade Boggs style. And because it sounds like a superhero,
Yeah.
he was all right. I don't know if I'm going to give this a 1.
Allow me to expand, if you will. Let me take over real quick.
Sure.
I'm not gonna. I was leaning towards 0 like instantly.
Yeah.
And here's why. It's funny because I'll play your part. Like I'll play Devil's Advocate Steve-O style, where he had a decent amount of agency and skills as well to match that. However, I guess my issue becomes like the actor himself was a little bit bland. And again, I blame somewhat the script itself because he had to like monologue exposition at the beginning, set up the whole world, blah, blah, blah. But I thought he was like the least interesting member of the little cadre of the High Five, as they started calling their clan. Like, yes, of course he's necessary, and he's supposed to be like, and it's funny, Steve, like, you guys might like this. He's almost like your literal, like, audience avatar, like, as an avatar.
Yeah.
So, like, etc. So you can get that joke out of it, I guess, if you want. But as far as, like, character itself and portrayal by the actor, they were both, again, serviceable, but I don't know if it's enough credit for me. I might give them a soft 0. Not they were shitty, but in any way, but I just think it's a little weak, a little flat.
You know what? I pretty much agree with that. He reminds me of like Ted from How I Met Your Mother. Like he's literally the worst part of the crew.
Yeah.
He was fine, but I don't give a damn about him, like, or what happens to him. Like I like, Artemis more than him. I like H more than him. They all had, and Daito and Sho are a little bit problematic for me, but I don't know if I want to get into that rabbit hole.
We'll do it in secondary characters in a sec, but
specifically Daito is more so. But anyway, I think that
Wade,
I'm going to give Wade a 0 on this one. What do you think, Rich?
I know when we finished watching the movie, I thought he did a passable job. And so, like, I spoke with Scott more at length.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really, like, I had a very difficult time remembering anything that made him stand out to me as a...
Yeah, he was passable, but not, like, memorable, not noticeable, really.
Yeah.
But, like, I think you're right. It's that, like, look of dull surprise on his face that he's constantly got. With his, like, mouth slightly agape. And
I also, like, I never really felt like he actually cared about anybody. Like... He was supposed to care about people, like, a lot. But it never...
Came through.
Yeah. For whatever reason, it just didn't... it didn't make... That part of it didn't make it through to me. I didn't think that he... Like, he cared... I don't even know if I was convinced that he really cared all that much about winning the... I think I felt like he cared about winning the Easter egg, but, like, he had no reason... Like, at least Artemis was, like, had, like, a backstory, however contrived it may have been. And I was like, this is what drives me. Like, I didn't really get what drove him to... Because... And they don't go into this too much, but the entire idea of this, of the Easter egg hunt, is that it's been, like, 5 years, and nobody's found shit, and then all this stuff starts happening. And, like, everyone else there, when it first started, this is something you get from the book. You can kind of, like,
I don't care what's in the book, though.
You can glean it from the movie, though. That's why. That's the only reason I'm saying
Fair enough, good.
But it's like offhandedly just mentioned at some point. Like, when it first started, there are a ton of people trying to get this fucking egg because everybody wants to win that prize, but they all, like...
Lose interest
eventually. And... I'm not convinced that he is one of the people that, like, stuck with it. One of the few people that stuck with it for these 5 years and still believed that he's supposed to be super passionate about it, and I didn't get that passion about it.
I don't know. I mean, I see what you mean. Like, I can nitpick it, but I don't want to, like, again, dwell on it. I just think, while, again, he served the role that the plot needed him to be, and the performance was good enough, it just, again, as a whole, for me, falls on the 0 line, so...
Yeah. I'm sorry, Rich, what, you're going to give it a 0 as well? Okay. Well, Rich, why don't you tell us about the supporting characters?
Best parts of the movie. Or best parts of the cast.
One of the strongest parts. Yeah. I'll give you that. I'll agree.
Yeah.
Like, pretty much, I loved his entire crew. Loved, God, I forgot the dude's name now. The corrupt corporate executive, his henchman.
IROC.
TJ. No, I was talking about IROC and Finale.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know, they were passable. I mean, most of them had very little backstory except for Artemis.
Artemis'
really.
exposition backstory.
Yeah.
Actually, now that I think about it, she's the only one that's had backstory.
Well, you know that H was called H by her father.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Good backstory, dude.
Yeah, you're right. It's a bunch of like kind of one-dimensional characters. They're all fun. Like I said, the thing about this movie is I'm gonna nitpick the shit out of it because we have to review it. If I had just gone to watch the movie and just didn't have to try and figure out what I was going to give all these questions and like think about it,
Sure.
I would come out of the movie and say, it was a lot of fun. I could watch that again tomorrow, or I could never see it again in my life, and it wouldn't change anything to me. Like, you know, I would watch it again if it was on. It's a blast. Like it's a
romp.
It's a walk down memory lane, like in the most badass way, kind of. But like also, there are a lot of problems with it, and all these side characters are like an encapsulation of that. In that they're all fun, but they don't have anything else going on for them, really.
Which is surprising from Spielberg, because like usually he injects some life into his.
Yeah, maybe again.
characters.
Yeah, I like I like Artemis and I like H. I think they both have enough substance there to be like enjoyable characters. Like I said, Dido and Cho were like made to be like super stereotypically Asian, and I don't understand like where they like. And the other thing is, if you're gonna do something like that, like give them a backstory that explains that, or like there was no backstory. It seems like they're from fucking Columbus, Ohio, so I don't know why
everyone
like,
is,
you know, fucking bowing with his like hands pressed together or whatever. And like I guess they're originally from Japan or China or wherever it's supposed to be.
You'll never know because the movie doesn't bother to tell you.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. It should have, and like it bugs me that it like brushes over that and doesn't. Whatever. Yeah. Like I said, I could talk about that for a while, and like that kind of bugged the shit out of me. But as far as Halliday and
Morrow, I think
Ogden Morrow. I liked both of them. I liked their portrayals. Both good actors, and the roles that they were given were pretty decent. You got a lot if you did the work of like trying to figure out what was going on with them. You got a lot out of their characters. I think a lot of that has to do with the performances, but a lot of it also has to do with I think that they were like
the best actors in this film. I was going to say that.
Well, yeah, but like they were also the ones that had the most underlying stuff
sort of weight to them.
Yeah.
Dude, their backstories were like part of the characters.
Exactly,
figure, like,
that was part of the hunt, so they needed to go into their backstories. So it fleshed out this characters, so you got more of a 3D picture of who they were. So like on the strength of them, on the strength of Artemis and
the crew,
and even H, I'm gonna give it a 1 for supporting. I think.
Yeah, I'm collectively going to give him a 1. I was going to, if you didn't mention him, I was going to mention Holiday because I think he was my favorite. Like I said, he's probably just outright the most talented actor. Again, somewhat apologies to the rest of the cast, but he just is.
Yeah.
And I think, like you said, like I like the way they sort of organically put in his actual backstory because it was part of the quest, if you will. And that was all fine. And like, yeah, the crew itself, I see your issue with the the portrayal of stereotypes there, but it wasn't as egregious. It wasn't as grating to me, but although I noticed it, and you're right, like every character spits out like one little line, like, hey, here's one thing about me, except for Artemis is like, here's my entire backstory, blah, blah, blah. And again, in like in a paragraph, and like, and now you know why I'm doing what I'm doing. Like, okay, that's fine. But yeah, collectively, they all did a fine job, and I enjoyed them. And I also said,
her backstory should have been saved for after she had kidnapped him.
Yeah. You're right. Like they could have dropped it in a different spot,
and then she'd be like, you know, IOI is responsible for killing my family too.
Yeah,
and then
you're right. You're right.
Right into
that
it.
would have been a nice integration for sure. But no, just like I said, overall, and like as I mentioned, antagonist, I'm shipping also Iraq and Finale into here as well. So given that, they all just collectively get a 1 from me.
All right,
pretty solid 1, in fact.
Yep, 1.
All right. 1's all around there.
Yep.
Now we're going to go to dialogue, Scotty.
All right. Looking at a 0 to start off with. Everything. So actually, I was debating this in my own mind, and you guys might enjoy this perhaps angle. should I count like, is all the references and all that stuff like a visual dialogue, or is it all just style? Because it sort of depends. If you're talking about what characters are saying to themselves, it's an outright 0, and we covered a lot of it already with like the exposition and all, like, and what we just said about Artemis's backstory, which is also exposition essentially. And like there were a couple like one-liner jokes and stuff and references again that were fine, like the camper, you're noob and shit like that. Like, yeah, as a video gamer, like I enjoy that shit, but I don't know if it's enough to outweigh like the actual like not really cringeworthy stuff, but again, like sort of just like bland. Character X has to say Y to character Z, and then that moves the plot along. So a lot of that stuff was just like, again, there as it needed to be, but didn't stand out. They didn't try to do anything clever with it, really. And like I said, they worked in a couple of solid jokes, but a lot of jokes were also visual gags that I liked, and visual references, of course. So if we're cutting up that way, I'm looking at a pretty solid 0.
Yeah. TJ Miller gets a 1, and even like so, like the funniest other parts of the movie, other than T.J. Miller, I think, were the talking about shows like Age.
Yeah,
like there were a couple funny jokes that came out of that, and that's it. Like, other than that,
yeah,
it's a 0, and that overwhelms everything else. I think that overwhelms the good stuff. None of the dialogue was particularly good or compelling or deep or anything really. I laughed out loud maybe 3 times in the movie.
I mean, I chuckled a couple of times, but other than that, it was kind of lackluster to weak for most of it. And there were so the thing is, there were parts of the movie that the dialogue was okay, but then there were cringeworthy as hell parts, and that's what's gonna give dialogue a 0 for me. I'm gonna call it 60-40 split, 60 on the bad side, if you will, like the weak side. So. What do you think, Rich?
Actually, I laughed at more of the jokes than I think you two did.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed the comedic aspect of the dialogue.
Sure, but does it outweigh?
Does it outweigh everything else?
Yeah. I think that's the real question here.
Well, when you ask me that question, no.
Like, I mean, that's how I'm looking at it. Is all. You don't have to, but for me, like that makes the most sense. Makes the most sense to figure out dialogue scoring.
I mean, I didn't want to give it a 0 because I have been quoting a few of the lines like since we got out.
Sure, but that's about it. And I would say in a week we might not be quoting those anymore. We'll be quoting other shit that we remember. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I'll have to give it a 0.
I mean, you don't have to. I'm just saying, for me, that's my argument why I think it does deserve a 0.
And if you don't agree with us, you can call us all campers.
Sure. You're all noobs anyways out there.
All right, so we're gonna go with 0s on dialogue, and that's gonna go to me with style.
Good one.
The best part of this movie.
Conversely,
easily the best part of this movie. Like, obviously, a lot of this shit was really cool. I've been talking about style like offhandedly the entire review here. Like I said, it's just a awesomely fun movie to watch. The portrayal of the Oasis of this VR environment is really cool.
Yeah.
There's a lot of interesting things that Spielberg and I guess Klein Klein wrote the script with somebody else.
He coded it with one other person.
Whatever they wrote in. There's a lot of like really interesting visual stuff. There's a couple good songs throughout.
Which is all nostalgia as well.
Yeah,
but
exactly. Well, listen.
I understand.
Just assume that I'm including the word nostalgia before
every fucking
that I say.
thing you say. Yeah,
here.
fair enough.
But yeah, like it's just like a really visually interesting movie. There's a lot of cool stuff going on. The battle scene is intense as hell, and all the little references thrown in are a lot of fun as well. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, agree. Of course, like you said, I'm not going to harp on the nostalgia thing because it's there, it's obvious, and that's sort of what a lot of people come to see it for. Yeah. That's what what was in the original source material, as far as I understand. And like, yeah, I generally like that kind of stuff. But I'll say, like, given that a lot of this movie has to take place in a CGI generated environment, like that was pretty top notch. Like, you know what I mean? Like, nothing was cheap or cheesy. It looked really convincing, and it was really really well done, like you said, and just fun to see. So.
I'm giving it a 1 just for the RX-78 Gundam.
Nice.
If it wasn't getting
When he popped up, I lost my shit.
Yeah, I remember I looked over and Rich was like grinning up.
Yeah,
ear to
it's
ear.
like
So like if you were going to give it 1 before that, you're giving it a 1 for
Well, I was
that.
always going to give it a 1 because
Yeah.
it's just,
yeah.
I mean,
you know,
I think you have to.
You got
I mean, if it
you got the Gundam, you
Yeah.
got the
If it-
Iron Giant. in
first
there.
off, when he was going over his rig with the omnidirectional treadmill, that was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
as soon as the race started, then I was
Yeah.
I was
By the way,
done.
fun fact: Ernest Cline has owned since he got rich off of the book.
I know.
Has owned a DeLorean. So having the DeLorean in there is a nice little Easter egg for him.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
I told Rich that. I was like, in real life, he got one, right?
Yeah.
Like, so, of course, the hero
that
drives
was
one.
part of the book too, wasn't it?
I think.
Does he drive one in the book? I don't know.
Well, I think he got his made specifically like the one in the book,
Maybe.
with like the kit light, the Ecto 1 stripes on the side,
Sure.
but not the oscillator from Buckaroo Banzai because that doesn't exist in real life.
Yeah.
Sure. But no, I mean, like, yeah, like the style is, like you said, probably the strongest part of this film, and I think that's definitely deserves a 1. So
I think so. Yeah. All right. So that's 1s all around for style. And then Rich, why don't you tell us about whether or not you recommend watch this movie?
I absolutely recommend watching this movie. Like, it's just a fun ride for people to watch. Like, everybody's going to see something they're a fan of, I think, out of it. And visuals are just, it's a pretty movie.
pretty impressive. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Actually, shit, I'll go back real quick. So my standout scene, to answer, I recommend it. Of course, if we're doing caveats, like, yeah, like, if you're part of, like, our generation, like, / tail end millennial, et cetera, like, you're going to love it because if you grew up in the 80s and / 90s, mid to early 90s as a kid, you're going to recognize every fucking thing in this movie and it's going to be like, oh. So, but I will say a personal story. We were in the theater with a couple of kids, of course, probably like 10-ish to 8. So the thing is, like, for example, when the Iron Giant, spoiler, goes down in the lava and gives a thumbs up, the thing from Terminator, like,
Right.
Rich and I chuckled, and the kids were, like, dead silent.
Yeah.
Because they had, like, if you don't know the reference, you're not going to get it. So my favorite one was when they go into the Shining segment, if you will. And, like, the one character had never seen The Shining, so it's like a meta joke, almost like, you never seen The Shining? Like, what the fuck? So they didn't know what to expect. So, like, I was laughing. I'm like, oh, man, the blood's going to come out.
Yeah,
like, all
when,
this shit.
when he goes up, goes up to the elevator and pushes the button.
So that was highly entertaining. So, like, yeah, like, of course, if Ian were here, he'd be curmudgeon and be like, no, this movie is preying on your nostalgia, and that's why, so probably don't recommend it. But no, it's a fun romp. It's just a good popcorn movie, and if you know a lot of the stuff, then you're going to enjoy it that much more. So,
You know what though? Fuck that. Because I wish I could be a kid. Here's my recommendation. Yes, I recommend this movie. I wish I could be a kid and see this movie and have all of these references to look forward to getting at some point.
Yeah.
You're like,
That's
when
close.
you like, imagine you watch this movie right now and you're like 12 years old, and then you see the Terminator. You see Terminator 2.
Sure, I mean, I get
and
you.
you're like, holy shit, that was a reference from Ready Player One. You can go through this movie and like see so many references to other things that you'll, if you become someone who
gets into it.
gets into cinema and film and stuff, like you can. If you're somebody who sees this movie when you're young, and then you become somebody who gets into cinema, you can go back. This is a movie you can go back to nonstop and be like, "Holy shit, that was a reference that I didn't get the first time I saw it. That was a reference that I didn't get."
Yeah.
And like, I love movies like that. The movies that I saw when I was young that I loved, and then I go back and see what they were referencing or homaging, and like.
I mean, you can find Easter eggs within it.
This movie is that the movie, like.
Sure.
So like,
That's
I
funny.
don't know. I think it's kind of cool for kids growing up now.
This
To
movie
be like,
actually,
you're just fucking bathed in like the history of like 80s and 90s, and even to an extent like I think 70s, like nostalgia and like things that were happening in those times and things that were important in those times.
this movie actually reminded me of like a live action The Lego Movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's pretty good. I like that. I like
Yeah.
that analogy. So yeah, like I do say check it out.
Give it a 1. Yeah. All right.
Where does that leave us?
So that is going to. I have not gotten these scores ready yet. So
God damn
give
it.
me a minute. Speak amongst yourselves.
All right. Well, I mean, like, yeah. So Rich and I actually trying to figure out, like, did we miss anything? Are there actual Easter eggs, like you mentioned, Steve-O, like within it that we like just went by in a blink of an eye, and like trying to think back if we saw anything that like would have been a reference of had we caught it and all that. So again, like I do think it's sort of like a nice meta thing where the plot itself revolves around finding Easter eggs, and they're like a lot you can find just because of the huge referential pool that they draw from for it. So
yeah,
another nice little thing to have there.
Absolutely.
Have you done the math now?
I've got the math. I've done the scores.
Okay.
This actually got a fairly low score. I thought it was going to do a little bit better than this, but Rich. Oh well, I gave it a 6, and Rich and Scott were a bit more curmudgeonly and gave it 5s. And I liked this movie more than a 6, I think, but
listen,
based on this
plot-wise on our scale,
based on like going by point, I think a 6 is a fair score, and I think 5s are even fair scores. So.
When I was watching this movie, I tried as hard as I could, like, not to dissect it and to save that for the end.
Yeah.
So then, like, Scott actually sat there with me as I was doing the transformation back into critic mode. As I was like, man, protagonist was good. And he's like, was he Rich?
You're like, no.
And I was like, no.
Why?
Sorry, man. You gotta crush your dreams.
But that's an aggregate of, sorry, I did not say yet.
Yeah,
it's an aggregate
total?
of 5.333.
It's fine, dude.
Repeating, of course. And,
listen,
so-
you can enjoy the film, but then we gotta get back to work and critique it. So.
Yeah, you're right. Anybody else?
I'll
have
definitely
any-
watch it again.
Yeah,
that's what I'm.
Yeah, you're
exactly.
right. If it comes on, like I'm not going to pay for it again, or like you buy the DVD. But when it comes on a movie channel, sure, I'll throw it on. I will say, like again, this is going to sound harsh, but this movie is more style over substance, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's for what that. Given that it was really well done, so
I
enjoy.
like it better than the Post.
Yes, enjoy it on that front.
All right, so I guess that's going to do it for us. Thanks you for joining us, everyone. I have been your host, Steve Ramosi, joined today by Rich Perry.
Good night.
And Scott Thurlow.
And I'll see y'all in the Oasis. Good night.
By Player 2.
Editing and engineering by Stephen Ramosi. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates. Or mods?